Hey, Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja. Today I got a special guest with me. I got Andrew Davis from the Wilmington, North Carolina area. He is one of the owners of the Crawl Space Ninja location out there. And for those of you that don't know, Andrew is also a realtor. And what he's going to talk about, or what we're going to talk about today, is possibly some advice for those who are looking to buy a home that has a crawl space, maybe some questions or some information you should know about. So stay tuned. So if you're new to Crawl Space Ninja, we talk about everything related to crawl space encapsulation, waterproofing, indoor air quality. We hope you'll subscribe to our channel, ring that notifications bell. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, check out our franchise opportunity and our DIY store. So how are you, Andrew? You doing okay today?
Doing well, Michael. Thanks so much for having me on here. I'm excited to talk about crawl spaces and their relation to real estate transactions.
Well, and you bring, obviously, this is a unique opportunity for discuss this topic, you being a realtor and all, but also being on the coast. You and I did a video a while back about floodplains and different things like that. If you live in a flooded area, as far as flood insurance and stuff. And I just wanted to mention that because we're going to put a link to that video down below. If you all are on the coast somewhere or near a floodplain, make sure you check that out too, because Andrew's got a lot of great information on the research and the installs they do out there in Wilmington based on floodplains. But really excited about getting your knowledge from a realtor's perspective, but also from a Crawl Space Ninja perspective, because we in Knoxville don't really do a lot of crawl space inspections when it comes to real estate transactions. Yeah. I think you probably don't do a whole lot of them either. Is that correct?
That's correct. Generally speaking, just the timeline associated from contract to close on a house generally takes us outside of the window of opportunity for us to get in and do the job right the first time.
Right. Well, and the other issue that we've always struggled with is, of course, the seller is the one paying for the job in most cases, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of situations where they may not be looking to hire the best of the best for a property they're not going to own anymore. So that kind of hinders us doing some of the work. So they go with maybe a punch list contractor or somebody to throw down vapor barrier, because a lot of times they're only willing to do what the home inspector said needs to be done. And the home inspector may not even be the expert when it comes to crawl spaces either, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Generally speaking, in fact, I would say that home inspectors are the opposite of experts in individual fields. And that's exactly what they should be conveying to buyers and sellers in their report is simply have a qualified, licensed, knowledgeable professional of that, whatever type of expertise we're discussing here, whether it's crawl spaces or HVAC or otherwise, take a look at the problem. So
that's a great point. And we're not trying to demean home inspectors, but they are looking at top to bottom, left to right, soup to nuts when it comes to a house. And just because they can inspect an HVAC system or a plumbing system doesn't mean they can repair it or replace it. So they're going on based on what the knowledge they have at hand and the moisture meters they're checking and all that sort of thing. And, even in general, Andrew, crawl spaces are just, there's not a whole lot of great information out there about them. You got a lot of basement waterproofing companies that dabble in crawl spaces. And I think there's only a few of us in the industry that focus our attention primarily on crawl spaces, which is why we have the install methods and all the things that we have, because we want to fix crawl spaces in a way that they improve air quality inside the house versus just throwing down some plastic. And I know you all do that out in Wilmington.
That's absolutely correct. And I would say, if I could lend a piece of advice to potential sellers of a home, first of all, if you live on a crawl space, call Crawl Space Ninja and have us come out and do a no cost to you estimate and take a look at what's going on underneath your house. It will, at the very least, provide you information to provide a home inspector or a buyer, should you decide to list the house, showing exactly what the problems within the crawl space are. And that level of transparency and disclosure are vitally important to successful sales of homes. On the buyer side of the transaction, same exact advice. If the home is on a crawl space, call Crawl Space Ninja and get a no cost to you estimate done, an inspection done of the house. So at least you have the information, and whether it happens during the transaction or after the transaction, if there are problems, they can be resolved and done the right way.
Well, and I just want to say that in some parts of the country, there may be a fee involved, depending on how quickly the inspector needs to get out to take a look at the crawl space, because many of the locations are independently owned and operated. So if you call a crawl space ninja near you and they charge you a fee, I just want you to know that that could also be the case. So I got some questions that I wanted to ask you. And this one is in regards to the Realtor.com website. And it actually says that owning a home with a crawl space has benefits, believe it or not, right? So do you mind sharing with our viewers what some of those benefits could be, especially to someone who's never owned a home with a crawl space before? What are some of the benefits of having a home with a crawl space?
Well, there's actually two huge benefits in owning a home on a crawl space. First of all is the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems that have immediate access points and open access throughout the entirety of the crawl space. Generally speaking, and not always, you might find an HVAC system in an attic of a home that's on a crawl space. But generally speaking, you're going to find HVAC systems, most of the electrical, and most of the plumbing in the crawl space itself, which, should you have a problem with any of those three major systems in the home, very easy for a professional to get underneath there and access it. The second important reason to have a crawl space is if you are anywhere near a flood zone or you are anywhere near the coast, like in Wilmington, North Carolina, it allows your first floor of your house to have a buffer zone between the potential flood area of the land and the actual interior of the home. So yeah, just two really important benefits there. Again, access to the major systems and the elevation off of the ground.
That's a good point. And, you know, my neighbor, for example, she has a slab house. She's actually a realtor, and her plumbing started backing up in the toilets. And I mean, it's 4 years old, 4-year-old house. Plumbing starts backing up. So, you know, she didn't have a crawl space for that plumber to go into and, you know, fix the P-trap or whatever was causing the issue. She literally had to have the slab jacked out and removed. And guess where the coupling was that they had to fix? It was actually in her master bedroom. So they had to remove the entire master bedroom concrete to get access to that area. And it was just horrible. She had like mounds of gravel. She took pictures that had mounds of gravel in her bedroom. Wow. From where they had to do all that work. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, nobody wants to have an issue, but at least with a crawl space, if something goes wrong, they can go down there and fix it. The other nice thing about a crawl space, whether it's in the attic or the crawl space, is those HVAC ducts and all that. If it's in the crawl space, it's not taking up room in your living space too, which is really nice. Because I've been in some homes, especially like a split foyer basement or something like that, where the ductwork's running through walls, or you got these chases that are taking away the ceiling and things like that. So those are some good reasons to have a house with a crawl space. All right, so let's look at question number 2. They go on in this article that I was reading to give some information that is kind of contrary to what Crawl Space Ninja talks about when it comes to controlling humidity and things like that. They talk about that you should properly ventilate the crawl space to dry them out. Okay, so which is totally against what we talk about. They talk about excess moisture needs to vent out. Anyway, so what do you say to people buying a homeowner that are maybe reading this article and getting some contrary information about how to actually dry out a crawl space?
Yeah, great question, Michael. The first thing I would say is do a quick Google search and look at International Building Code and look at what's required by code in order to one, encapsulate a space and to maintain a crawl space. Because what most homeowners will find is that code updates over the past few years have resulted in actually suggesting and requiring that if a house is on a crawl space, that not only is the encapsulation preferred, but also that the vent should actually be sealed. So yeah, I would say, in response to the Realtor.com article, that there's a lot of outdated information out there. And I always direct people to go to the source, go to International Building Code and look it up yourself. It's in plain English, plain language, on exactly how things should be done.
That's a good point. And there's still a lot of homeowners and pest control, or a lot of home inspectors and pest control companies that still are under that ventilation is better methodologies. And unfortunately, we find, especially in Wilmington and Knoxville, where I'm located, where it's humid all the time outside, if you're ventilating a crawl space, all you're doing is bringing hot, humid air into that environment. And if you want to see a contradiction to that, run your AC and open all your windows, right? I mean, see how well a ventilated living space is for moisture, right? You're going to see condensation around, the registers that are cold. Anything in the house that has a cold temperature will start to condensate, and it's the same way inside the crawl space. So great advice. All right. So what are things the homeowner or the home inspector should do or should look for as warning signs of a problem inside the crawl space? So let's say that I don't know anything about crawl spaces. I'm looking to buy a house. I'm still in the initial, kind of looking at everything. My wife's in the car. My kids are checking out the backyard. What should I be checking out in the crawl spaces as I poke my head in there and look for?
Yeah, another great question. So first thing you should do is look at the crawl space door. If the crawl space door is made of wood and is dilapidated, if it's made of metal and is rusted out, or if there's no door to the crawl space and just a gaping opening, that is alarm bell number one. Alarm bell number two is, should the door look fine or at least in working condition, and you poke your head in and there's nothing underneath there except fallen insulation and random material throughout the crawl space, just in the crawl space opening, that should be alarm bell number two. If you stick your head in there and there's standing water directly in front of the crawl space door, I'd say that's alarm bell number three. And in the event that you see a home with a crawl space that is in that condition, it would behoove you as a buyer to ensure that there's some type of crawl space inspection done, and hire somebody like Crawl Space Ninja or just Crawl Space Ninja to come out and give you an estimate on what it would cost to fix such a job.
That's a good point. A couple other things I was thinking of just as you were speaking was, I, for some reason, have been in crawl spaces where they had box fans, right? Just blowing high humidity all over the place. And of course, the sellers obviously trying to sell the home, somebody probably told them that they needed to circulate the air to dry the crawl space out. So that could be a sign of a moisture problem, and the box fans are down there to try to dry it out. Another thing too is, if you got that ductwork running through and you happen to have a flashlight with you, you can sometimes see beads of water along the bottom of the ductwork, especially in the summertime. So that's some great information for the homeowner to check out, a potential buyer. All right. So what about outside the crawl space? Those are some things to look for inside the crawl space. What about outside? What could they look for?
Yeah, specifically outside the home is if you see the vents along the foundation walls of the home, and the vents are either don't have covers that are present, or there's been obvious intrusion of rodents or other pests in the vents themselves. Happens a lot down here near the coast. That is definitely a warning sign. Moving away from the actual foundation walls, if you see reverse grading or a reverse slope from earth, meaning the earth is higher away from the foundation and lower as you get closer to the foundation, also a warning sign, as that means that gravity is naturally taking groundwater into the home and not away from the home. Another important thing to look for is downspouts from gutters. If your downspouts on the house are either not present or are present and are dumping water immediately outside the foundation, that is another major problem, and probably means that water and moisture is permeating the crawl space and the foundation walls and thereby the home.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm sure if you're seeing that concrete driveway heaving or the walkway heaving, and there's a lot of mismatched concrete, that's a lot of sign of moisture or potential washing out of the soil from underneath, and that could be an issue for flooding. I'm sure it is in North Carolina too, but they'll build huge houses right next to each other,
Right.
and then they'll be dumping water towards each other. So, you want to make sure there's a berm between them that can get that water to the street. You don't want your neighbor dumping water on you. So that's some good stuff to look for. All right. So let's go into the house now, Andrew. Most people don't think that you can find a crawl space problem by going into the house, but there are some things you can look for as a homeowner, some red flags, if you will, inside the home. And what could those be?
Well, as soon as you enter the front door, if you are presented with humid air, if you're presented with a smell that resembles cat pee, or you're presented with any kind of bad smells, especially if the house is clearly well maintained or clean as it should be, if it's just been listed, those are both immediate indicators that something's going on underneath the house, right? Because what does air do? It rises, right? So again, that humid air and those smells could be indicators of crawl space issues. If the home has hardwood floors, if you look down and you see cupping or bulging of the hardwood floors, that means that moisture content in the wood, both in the subfloor and in the hardwood itself, moisture levels are fluctuating because the moisture is not controlled in the crawl space. And then I'd say finally, if you are in the house, even in the summer, for longer than an hour or 90 minutes, and the HVAC system is continuously running, it could be an indicator that there's an issue with the crawl space. Again, as hot, humid air rises from the ground through the crawl space into the home.
That's a great point. And even sometimes your seller may not allow this, but if there's a register in the floor and you can lift that register up and see that boot rusted on the inside, sometimes that's a great indication of moisture from that HVAC system. But that was a good tip about the HVAC. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so Michael, you just asked me about ventilating crawl spaces and open vents. Let's talk about the difference between historical construction methods and current construction methods, and how those things have changed over the past 100, 150 years, and certainly beyond that. So down here in Wilmington, and specifically downtown Wilmington, we have beautiful homes that are built on crawl spaces in downtown Wilmington next to the riverfront. And those homes, believe it or not, mostly are not encapsulated. And issues that those homes do not have are moisture issues, mold issues, or ventilation issues. And why that is the case is simply the type of construction of the walls, of the foundation walls of the home. And more importantly, what we have found is the wood that was milled and used to construct the joists and subfloor and floorboards of homes. And now I'm talking just for context here, sometime between 1880 and 1920.
Sure. Older homes, right?
Yeah, that those homes do not have crawl space issues, generally speaking. That's not always the case, but that's what we found is generally, especially when it comes to mold, that wood does not allow mold or mildew to grow on it because of the quality of hardwood that they use to construct the homes. Now, fast forward to any home built after 1960, 1970, i.e. probably 99% of the people watching this video, the farm pine wood that we go to Lowe's and purchase, or go to Home Depot and purchase, or pick your local store where you purchase wood, generally speaking, that farmed wood that is milled and then used to construct homes is not as quality or as durable or as impervious to water and mold and mildew as historical homes are. And so what's important is, if your home is on a crawl space and it's not a historical home, which again is probably about 99% of the people watching this video, you need to do something about your crawl space. And a crawl space, going back to the beginning of this video, a crawl space is not a bad thing for your home to have, But just like any other major system in the house, whether it's your siding or roof or other major component, it's imperative that you take care of it. And one of the ways we take care of that is following International Building Code, encapsulating the space, and ensuring that there's proper airflow and humidity control.
That's a great point. I actually, a couple of years ago, I did a video with a gentleman down in Florida that purchased a house that was built by Andrew Carnegie in the 20s. And I'll put a link to that video down below. It wasn't very popular for some reason, but it was a very cool house. And the house was made, I think they actually built the lumber mill on the property as they were building the house. You know, so they didn't ship, they cut the trees down on the property and turned those trees into the house. And that wood was almost petrified. It was hard oak and different things like that. And you're right. The wood that we use today is way different than stuff used back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's a good point. What should a buyer do if there are major problems in the crawl space after they have purchased the house? What are some of the things they can do? Can they like sue the seller, or, you know, I mean, because I want to sue my home inspector because he didn't tell me I had mold, right? So what are some of the things that a buyer can do about that sort of thing?
Yeah, good question. As far as legal issues are concerned, really the only thing a buyer can do legally, and specifically this is in North Carolina, and I just want to send a disclaimer out there that this wouldn't apply to any other state in my knowledge. But specifically in North Carolina, which is my area of expertise, if a seller had told the buyer and shown evidence that, for example, the crawl space had been encapsulated and the buyer's inspector didn't catch it, and the buyer didn't catch it, and all of a sudden they move in and there is no encapsulation. In fact, the crawl space doesn't have any plastic at all in it. It doesn't have anything inside of it. It just is as bare as the day the home was constructed, let's say 10, 15 years ago. In that case, and only in that case, under the suit of misrepresentation, a buyer may be able to sue a seller, but that is a very rare case. So to best answer your question, a buyer's probably not going to be able to do anything in pursuit of the seller to remedy how the crawl space sits post-closing. What they can do is be proactive and recognize that this is the home that they purchased, and the crawl space is a important and can be advantageous major component of the home and needs to be maintained properly. And so I'd say the first step for a buyer, if I were in their shoes, is to call Crawl Space Ninja and have an inspector come out and provide an inspection and estimate of whatever work, if any, would be required to make sure the crawl space is done right the first time and is in the proper working order. Michael, if your roof had a hole in it, you'd do something about it.
Right.
Oftentimes, because we don't look at our crawl spaces because they're underneath us and quite honestly inconvenient to access a lot of times, we forget that those major issues are very similar to having a hole in your roof or a hole in your siding.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, you know, the point is, like, you hit the nail on the head. Do your due diligence and make sure that it's taken care of. If it's not taken care of, then at least know what the issue is so that whenever the house is closed, you have the ability to get it taken care of in the future. So, well, Andrew, that's some great information that you gave us for, you know, how to purchase a home with a crawl space. And anything else you want to add to the video for our viewers?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. In addition to contacting Crawl Space Ninja for all of your crawl space needs, I would also say that if you're in the Eastern North Carolina area and you are interested in investment properties or interested in purchasing or selling a home, I work with a fantastic group of like-minded investors and realtors, Quiet Waters Realty Group. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to help you in any way that we can.
That sounds great, Andrew. And take it from me, I've worked with Andrew on some real estate transactions. He is wonderful and a great representative for you as a realtor. So thank you for all your great information, and I hope you all make it a happy and blessed day, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, Michael.